Welcome to Psychic Girls Next Door. We are your hosts, Lili
and Shannon Miller. This podcast is for all spirituality enthusiasts and psychics next door to share tools, experiences, and spiritual practices that align with your highest vibrational self.
And on this episode, we will be talking about creating and managing the energy of prosperity and abundance. So abundance is a universal principle, and it is present everywhere. It is the energy of unformed substance, the cause of more than enough of whatever you can imagine as possible. And then prosperity is the specific physical form, so the effect from the abundance principle. So basically, abundance and prosperity is just energy. And that's what we're going to be expanding on. And we also would like to share, how that impacted our lives and our beliefs. And I had a lot of limiting beliefs around abundance and prosperity, because I grew up in a developing country. My grandparents were refugees, so they were immigrants, and they came with nothing. So I already came from this lack mentality, and that also that you have to work really hard to make any money to the point that you have sacrificed yourself.
Yeah, that's a good narrative that you've shifted.
Yes, right. And that's kind of what's been running in my family. So it became almost this like generational belief. So it just gets passed on from family member to family members. And my family also, they all kind of adopted that mentality too. But I grew up in a pretty middle-class family. I can't complain about like being in this position where we didn't have enough, because I think my dad, and I came from this background where my dad worked and my mom was a homestay mom. Mm-hmm. So he was the one that brought in, income, and he worked really hard. He worked like for the same company for like decades. He's like from that generation.
Yeah. What did he do?
He was a civil engineer.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And my dad, he managed roads like across the state.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So he used to travel a lot to supervise and, just manage like road construction or road like inspection or remodeling, things like that. So he was always traveling.
Yeah.
So we grew up, we always had everything we needed. Our parents were able to always like provide for us. And, but there was always that, when you have family members that have a better lifestyle.
Oh, yeah.
There's always that comparison, like, oh, they're able to go to Disney, right? Like when I lived like in Brazil, and we're like, oh, but we don't have enough money for that. Mm-hmm. So it was always this comparison of some have more than others. But, and also we have also this religious energy of like, you have to be humble.
Oh.
Be humble. So you can't like be too flashy, and this happens with others. So it's always like others, that
Interesting.
are in this mentality, not us,
right?
Because we're very humble people, and that's how we show up. And so I lived in this lack mentality for a long time,
right?
I think up to like the time that you and I met.
That's wild. That's a long time.
It's a long time. It's pretty much almost my life. But,
right. Well, yeah. Like if you're running on information for such a long time, and it's usually your parents' information and their parents and, their parents before that, generational information, it can be in your space and you may not even realize that you've been running off of that.
Yeah. So it's almost like an unconscious belief, So I was always in survival. I think even from the time where I moved to the U.S. too, it was almost like trying to make money today so I could eat tomorrow. Mm. And I would have sometimes I would eat like once a day so I could have like enough money to last for the week. So I've been through some really shitty situations. This is part of my French.
Yeah.
But Yeah, but I lived in a lot of this sort of like a victim mentality too. Like,
It usually goes hand in hand.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Survival and victim mentality. Like,
Right.
wow, what is this thing's happening to me? I cannot make enough money. So it's always this lack.
Right. And
always the lack.
And if you say, I can't make enough money, you won't make enough money.
Yeah, because you're affirming that.
Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of how my background influenced how I live for so many years. But what about you, Shannon?
Yeah. I just talked to my parents today, so I want to be as mindful as I can. My mom listened to episode 3, so, it wasn't that bad of the conversation. But I grew up middle class as well in Antioch, in the Bay Area, in the East Bay, super deep East Bay, if you're familiar with the East Bay, for anyone listening. And I grew up in a relatively safe neighborhood until about the early thou. Then it got a little ghetto, and then a lot ghetto, and like shootings are in our neighborhood, multiple gunshots every night, that kind of environment. But, it adds character. You can take the girl out of the hood, but you can't take the hood out of the girl. My joke to myself for growing up in Antioch. And hey, anyone who grew up there gets it. So, growing up in a middle class suburbia type of, neighborhood, I think I was very aware that we didn't have money for like extra things, or my grandma would pay for it. My mom's mom would definitely like take us to TJ Maxx all the time and go shopping. And, we would do like extra things with my grandma. And I think we saw her like once a month. My mom grew up in Moraga, and my mom grew up pretty like middle to like, comfortable. Like, I wouldn't say they were like rich, but they were comfortable. My grandma didn't work. And my grandpa was a contractor, he built housing developments. So he was like pretty well off, but he died when my mom was like 22. So he died really young. And so like I don't know how my grandma did it, but either way, they were comfortable their entire lives. And it's interesting that you bring up this concept of comparing to other family members, because my mom's eldest sister is a nurse, and she was married to a pharmacist, so they always had money. They lived in a beautiful house, like a huge home in Clayton, on the outskirts of like, Concord, and this like, private court. And then my mom's middle sister is a hair stylist, so she's a cosmetologist, hustler, like through and through, like getting that dollar every day. And then my mom, she worked part-time as a special education aide, which is such an honorable career. And so she was able to get in, but she always had she was like a travel agency, and she, didn't go to college. Both my parents, my dad got his AA in, I think, business administration, and he owned his own business. He was a landscape architect. So he designed people's backyards. He designed gas station areas. And then eventually when he got a job at the college I went to in the East Bay, it was like he made it. He had a real salary. He had benefits. We always had benefits like healthcare through my mom's job, but it was definitely, I think at like 5 or 6, I was very early on made aware of how much money we did or didn't have, and emphasis on like didn't have, because there were activities like I wanted to learn how to ice skate, things like that are, but I never did. And, I, maybe one day I'm not that old. I can still learn. I can go, and I can now afford it on my own.
But these are things that kind of stay with you.
They do stay with you. Like,
it's always that thing, well, they can have it, but how come I can't?
Right. Like if abundance is like free flowing, why isn't free flowing for us?
Why do we have to work so hard to have this type of abundance?
Right. And as soon as I could drive or get a job, I got a job. And I bought my own clothes in high school. My mom would buy our probably too expensive prom dresses, to be quite honest. But she would buy special occasions, stuff like that. But I remember one year, I think like Christmas gifts were really slim. And like my mom would go, like she would save up all year to like buy like $1,500 or $2,000 worth of Christmas gifts, which is not a lot of money if you think about like if you are in a well-off position, but she would save literally all year for us to have Christmas gifts, which was amazing.
Wow.
But it like, look at all that time having to save up for a year and plan ahead, where a lot of people, you know, they can just go out and buy it tomorrow and they don't even have to think twice about it, or, you know, they don't have to put it on a credit card. And I remember my parents never fought about anything, but they would have discussions around money. Yeah.
Same. I heard my parents too, not only discuss, but they would argue.
Interesting.
About money in front of me as a child.
Oh, yeah. You take that in.
Absolutely. It becomes like you become part of it.
Yeah.
Either like consciously or unconsciously. It just stays with you because it's part of you thinks you're responsible for that too.
Right.
Even though like you're not, like looking as a child, like there's nothing to do with you, but I thought at times like, oh, because I asked for that toy.
Yeah.
It was maybe a little too expensive, or because I wanted that dress, and it became like my narrative. So you become guilty.
Yeah. Yeah. You have those feelings of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have like asked for that. And I think I stopped really being the one to ask for a lot of things as soon as I became at a young age aware of like how much we did or didn't have. Because I always felt like I could entertain myself regardless of like, you know, whether I had something or not. Like with my babysitting money, I saved up to buy my first bass guitar when I was 13. And like, I think my dad helped me with like part of it. So I never felt like, you know, there were things, of course, that we couldn't afford. And it was just like, it was what it was, right? Like you can't afford it. You can't afford it. You can't live beyond your means. And we always had food on the table. We always had, you know, felt warm. We had pets growing up. We could feed them. Like it was a very like comfortable home environment. So I feel very grateful for that. But there were like those, when you look outside of your family unit and you see what other people have and you see like them going to Disneyland, right? Or going on lavish vacations. And like we went on a cruise when we were 12 to Mexico and it was fun, but we didn't go. And that, I would say that's a real vacation, but we would do like local, you know, trips rather, like maybe Tahoe once a month. Or once a weekend, like for 4th of July every year. That was like our annual family vacation. And then, because my dad had friends who lived up there and like knew people who owned a house, especially when I was really young. And then we didn't take like our first like lavish family vacation until my grandma died. And a year later, we went to Hawaii as a family. And my mom probably spent way too much money on that trip, but it was amazing. And I'm like, wow, like this feels like what people... You know, I had never felt like what it was like to go on vacation until like I was 16, besides like smaller trips, like, and not to say, and I don't want to victimize myself in any way. I had a great life growing up and very comfortable in, you know, you made it work, right? But when you get that experience of like, oh, this is how the other half lives, you know, like that saying, and it was a very fun vacation. And it just made me realize, like, I really like this. I want more for myself.
And then you kind of think to yourself, like, wait, I can have this too.
Right.
So it's almost like you step into the space where you think like only the VIP people at a very selective club that can have access to that. But then you realize that you also have the right or permission to have the same things, if not even more than that. And I didn't even tap into that concept until later in life.
Right.
Because I always thought that things like that were very limited, right? It's only like available to a few people.
Like scarcity pictures.
Yeah. Very much so. I always thought, well, because they have wealthy parents, they're lucky. And those type of beliefs, right? So there's like certain people that deserve to have that, and because they went to this and this school, so that's why they have what they have. So I always was trying to justify in my mind why they were in, in this wealth and I was not. But I also I think the way that I shifted my beliefs was also how I looked at abundance, because it's not only about money.
Right.
Right. Abundance is just this realization that there's an unlimited source of everything that we need or we could ever want. And for me, that changed everything, that there's enough for everyone. And I think when you look at the world's current situation, and there's also always this lack, right? Always this lack. This is just for select few people. You cannot have it, like education, food, and all types of stuff. And for me, I started to transcend those limiting beliefs. I'm like, no. I'm like, I am also going to start bringing more of this energy into my space. And that shifted a lot of my energy, how I brought in more flow, of abundance and prosperity. And for me, abundance, it's also about creative energy. When you tap into, you're able to create things, there's abundance because you create, and you're also able to make money out of it, maybe create opportunities, create connections. So creativity, synchronicities, for me, it's also abundance too, because it kind of all comes together. And for me, it's just this flow, like a flow of energy.
Yeah. I think I realized I had limiting beliefs around abundance when I read The Secret.
Yeah. Right. They talk a lot about it.
Yes. And it called me out so hard. I can't even tell you which quote it was, but it's the chapter or the section on manifesting abundance in your life. And I had done the clairvoyant training program we did, and my thing was trying to find a boyfriend. That was my priority. And of course, shifting other personal development things in that program. It was, and also shifting money, because money and love are very highly correlated, right? Your beliefs about yourself and what you deserve from a self-love and self-care perspective, that can translate into being able to manifest abundance, whether it's money or resources or connections. All of it is I think it's very, very tied together. And there's some people, because I would always question how do people find love? And how do people get rich? I would always be focus on the how. And what's interesting, when I read The Secret, they were you can't focus on the how. And that was you just have to trust. You have to trust that it's going to happen. And you have to believe. And the whole concept in The Secret is you have to feel good to manifest. And I was not feeling good for years. Such a negative person to myself. I probably was my harshest critic, and that had a lot to do with me getting jobs that only paid a certain amount of money. When I first started working in the city, I made only $36,000 a year or something like that. 34.
Even the salary is limiting.
Yeah.
Right? Because you probably you set the limit for yourself.
Right.
Kind of almost unconsciously. Well, this is
what I deserve.
This is what I deserve. And this is as much as I can get.
This was all I can get. This is all I can get. Literally, that was my narrative for a long time.
Wow.
And then I got a little bit more money when I got promoted or shifted to a new job, then a little bit more. But for not until a couple of years ago, I started, something really shifted. And I think it was when I read The Secret. And it was you have to really tap into what are your most critical thoughts about yourself in regards to scarcity, limiting beliefs, anything related to something that's going to bring you down, right? Negative self-talk, and then shift that. Understand, why am I talking to myself like this? Why am I believing these things? And then once you figure out what that is, then you can shift the energy and start to create your own narrative. What is your own information? Because most of the time it's information from other people, whether it's your parents, society, something you picked up from a movie when you were younger.
You can tell by our stories.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Just by listening to our stories, how those things, they are so ingrained in ourselves. It becomes almost our identity.
Right.
In a way, my identity was also that, oh, I can't have it. And I'm not worthy of receiving, better things or having better opportunities.
So then you never did.
And then you never do because you limit yourself in that energy. So my energy was also the same. So that, and again, like where you focus your energy and your attention, this is what you're going to end up manifesting in your life. So if you focus in lack, oh, I can't have it. I don't deserve it. And all this like lack mentality, you're going to receive lack.
Right. Or situations that make you experience lack.
Yeah. And I know sometimes it might be easy for us to talk, well, just focus on abundance, because I know it's not as simple as that. But I think that just starting by just noticing, where do you limit yourself when you are talking about abundance or you're talking about money? What is your relationship with that? If you think, let's say, for example, when you think about maybe making 10K more than you do now, how do you feel? Do you feel fear about it? Because if fear comes in, then there is a good indication that you're in lack.
Right. Or is there an initial instant thought of like, oh, that'll never happen?
Right. Yeah. So you're already setting the path to go in that direction. So, and then you kind of you stay in this lack of energy. But I think also something else that for me was, I really, and I still work on it up to these days, is receiving.
Right. Permission to receive.
Permission to receive, because abundance and prosperity, because it's energy. So it's a giving and taking, giving and receiving. So it's because it's constant flow. And for a long time, and I think, I want to say like society in general, right? I mean, it's all about giving. And like, especially I work as a caregiver. So it's always about giving to others, putting others first. And then I started to think about, but wait, I want to receive it too.
Right.
But I never gave myself permission to receive because, and again, you have all those limiting beliefs behind that. But I think as I start opening up more to receive things, when people will give me things, I'm like, okay, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Right.
I will receive, with an open heart, because as I started receiving, I started moving this energy. And things just start flowing more and more. And once you start tapping into that, you want more. Like, yes, let's just keep the ball rolling too. But I think also, another great way to shift your energy a little more into abundance, it's look into gratitude. As you've mentioned, what do you have right now that you can be grateful for? Your body. Oh, we're listening to this podcast on a computer,
right,
on your phone. Be grateful for that. So just start acknowledging and appreciating, because then you start bringing more of that into your life.
I fully agree with you. And when I'm going to bring up The Secret again, but when I read The Secret, it is about being grateful for what you have. And I realized like I have so much to be grateful for. My health, my family, my friends, my cat Zoe, she's my soul cat. Like whatever you feel grateful for, and look at all of these things. They're not related to money at all.
Right? It's either people, experiences, or whatever it is that brings you joy. Doesn't necessarily have to be the dollar bill or whatever currency that you use. But I think it's a state. It's an energetic state, that you kind of put yourself in, and you can always decide. Every day you make choices. You can make a choice to be in lack, or you can make a choice to be in abundance. So experiment being more in abundance. Just kind of start tapping into that, and just notice how things, they start shifting.
You'll just like see it, and you may not like see it right away, but you'll feel it. I felt it internally at first. I feel like I was constantly anxious. And as soon as I changed my narrative about being anxious about where am I going to get my next dollar? I think for a few years I was in that place. I shifted that energy, and then I read The Secret. So I think I did a little bit of both, right? And each thing, but I had my aha moment.
Right. Something shifted in you.
Yeah, massively shifted.
Well, it's interesting because for me, books also helped in this transition. But I also decided to educate myself on financial management because I had no idea how to manage my money.
Yeah.
Like I had no budget. I spent way more than what I made. So for me, it's also taking action.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, and I dreaded that.
Oh yeah, you have to face yourself.
Yeah, you face yourself. You face your own issues, and I was like, you know what? I need to educate myself and start really organizing my finances. So for me, it was taking small steps, just like downloading this online budget planner, reading books. So I also recommend 2 books. One is Smart Girls Finish Rich. If you want more information on, how to improve your finances. And the other one is I'll Teach You to Be Rich. And actually, I heard about those books on a podcast. So I just want to pay it forward. So if this brings you more information and more insight, I hope this brings you, more abundance to you, and hopefully it will flow into your life. And, but we also have immense gratitude for each one of you listening to us. But thank you so much for listening, joining us. And don't forget to leave us a comment, a review, and we'll see you on our next episode.
Thank you so much from the Psychic Girls Next Door.
Bye-bye.